Hello, welcome to another video, and this one's one where we're discussing the danger of metabolic syndrome and really explaining what it even is and how it's like a precursor to much more serious problems. So there's so many things that I've just got a quote on here saying it doubles your risk of developing cardiovascular disease, but it really, there's so many other things it can get into, so let's get into it. So firstly, metabolic syndrome is a name that is given to describe a range of risk factors that basically raise your risk for heart disease, diabetes, stroke. All those things are linked to each other. Basically it's like a warning signal of something that's much more serious to come. So the term metabolic refers to the biochemical process involved in the body's normal functioning, and they've obviously been disrupted, and then you're exposed to heart problems, diabetes, stroke, etc. So how to prevent it? Well, it's really lifestyle factors are the big problem here. It's not bad luck. It's not like a genetic thing even. It's really something that we create ourselves. So a diet, lack of exercise, and just things that we all know that are a problem, but most people don't see the danger of what they're doing until it's already happened. So the things that prevent it are also the same things that treat it. So let's just discuss what these are. So firstly, just coming back to some of the characteristics of what metabolic syndrome are. So it's really comes down to having at least 3 of these following conditions: abdominal obesity, as you see in this picture up at the top here, high blood pressure, high blood cholesterol, high triglycerides, high blood sugars. So they're very consistent with diabetes type things. All right, so this is where before you've got the complications of diabetes, you're already on your way there. This is sort of like before that you sort of start to get the serious symptoms. So you really, you can see how we're sort of saying this is a precursor to the warning of something bigger to come. So I've got, you can read through this slide if you in your own time if you want, but basically it's like, you know, increasing your chances of getting these more serious problems. You know, and as I've got down the bottom here, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and death, you know, obviously going to be a high chance if you do nothing about it. All right, so that sort of gives you an idea of what this is. So if you're someone who's got a lot of abdominal fat, or even not a lot, just sort of beginnings of it, this is something you need to be aware of. So going into a bit more detail of it, so this sort of gives you like the body shapes of different types of people. The apple shape is always more of a serious problem than the pear shape. Having more abdominal visceral fat is so much more problematic than fat that's stored on the hips. It's not good to have fat anywhere, but especially in the abdominal region, that's really a warning that you are now heading towards this metabolic syndrome. And like I said before, that's when at least 3 of these things are starting to become present, you know you're nearly there. All right, so again, you can read through this in more time if you want. I don't want to spend too long. The rest of this video go for 2 hours. So by the numbers, this is sort of how common and how many people it's affecting. So 40% of people over 60 years of age. So that's quite a high degree of people. And you know, these also with the COVID stuff going on right now, these are the same people that are more likely to experience extreme sort of side effects of if they did get COVID, as opposed to people who may be asymptomatic or have very mild sort of problems associated with it. So they're really big thing for the world right now. So a huge amount of people, as we've discussed a few times, the abdominal obesity, high blood sugar, high triglycerides. A loss of just 3 to 5% of your current body weight can lower your risk for metabolic syndrome significantly. So it's not like a huge amount that you have to change. Just you can see how it's so important to recognise it early on, and if you can do that, you may never experience these huge problems that come about once it really progresses to its more serious stage. So fasting blood sugar level of 100 milligrams or higher is a metabolic risk factor. The waist circumference, at least 40 inches for men and 35 for women, is a visible sign of metabolic syndrome. So obviously you can see from the picture here, it's not that hard to, you don't really need to measure that. You can really see it quite easily. The blood pressure, this is obviously not a good thing for high blood pressure. This is where strokes and that come into it, and cholesterol and all that sort of stuff as well. So you can really see how the odds, once you start to see this sort of shape occurring, you're heading in the wrong direction. So, like I said before, it really is very closely linked with diabetes, and people with diabetes up to 8 times more likely to experience heart failure. So that's quite a significant risk to be taking if you're going to be doing things like stuffing yourself with hamburgers if you're already overweight and not as active as you should be. So, as I've been over a few times, just to really ram this message home of like, these are any three of these factors and you're really already on your way. All right, so you might have good blood glucose and maybe even low cholesterol, but your blood pressure, your abdominal side of things is increasing. There's a good chance these are going to come along very soon anyway. All right, so eating a diet high in sugar and processed foods combined with lack of physical activity is really the cause of this. Like I said, it's a lifestyle thing. So, these are both pictures here of like someone who has metabolic syndrome. All right. So the good news is you can prevent it. So how do you prevent it? Well, really simply reduce your body fat and improve, especially the belly fat, like I spoke about before. It's nothing really that we don't know already, but it's just a lot of people wait until it becomes a huge problem before they decide to do something about it. So insulin resistance is a big problem, right? So this is again the diabetes type thing. So your body this is a condition where your body cannot use in the right way the insulin it makes. So the foods we eat, if they're basically turned into sugar called glucose, especially if you're eating high carbohydrate type diet and processed foods, obviously sugar, once you sort of get, and with your lack of activity, you start to develop this problem with converting insulin into glucose, and then the body basically is unable to lock the key to get into the insulin to turn it into energy. So then that's when you become insulin resistant. So as you said several times already, the main cause of insulin resistance, too much body fat, especially around the waist, not being active enough. What can you do about it? Well, eat healthy. That's a no-brainer. Losing as little as 7% can be a real big factor. Like I said before, it could even be 3 or 5%. Try to get active more often and really include weight training, which we'll go over to you in a minute. So muscle's really important, and I've been over this in several of my videos with heart health, lung health, immune health, osteoarthritis. There's just so many important things that muscles do. It's so much more valuable to you than just looking good in a mirror. All right, so you can see here, like more muscle has a 30% lower risk of heart disease, 30% lower risk of dementia and depression, up to 83% lower of osteoarthritis, up to 68% with hip fractures, 30% with falls with the elderly, up to 50% of type 2 diabetes, 50% of colon cancer and breast cancers. So these are all important to understand. So there's so many valuable things to having a good muscle mass, but you need to understand that you can't just train like a bodybuilder. You need to sort of still move well as well, but just going out for a walk, it may not be enough for you. And here's a sort of a complicated slide, I suppose you could say, of like giving an example of how things that we don't see straight away a consequence for building up, and some of the things that we should be doing. So a person who sits all the time, they're basically their cholesterol and their blood sugars are all getting disrupted. Then increase some alcohol with it, and you can see in terms of lockdowns, which I'm in again here for the 5th time in Melbourne, you can see how these two things are really increasing the problems with metabolic syndrome. There's so many jobs now that are software, so again, like they're all day they're sitting, they may be drinking soft drinks with that have high amounts of fructose, and again, all of these things are really disrupting blood sugars, cholesterol levels, increasing abdominal fat. Then you have some comfort foods to go along with that. Again, all these sort of things, we know that they're not good for us, but when we're in not a good state, it sort of starts to spiral out of control. Instead, we should be trying to eat better vegetables and fruits and stuff like that, fish, nuts, they're all better choices than these sort of things. And obviously trying to move more if we've got a job that's sitting on your ass all day. Get to bed on times, try to have things to improve your stress levels and so forth. So it's sort of an example of a way to try and improve your triglycerides and blood sugars as well. So foods to try and eat more of and things to eat less of, well, vegetables, obviously it's a no-brainer. Whole grains, fruits, legumes, obviously your fishes and your good proteins and so forth. Foods to avoid, all your sort of rubbish foods really. There's no brainer here. Like if you've got abdominal fat, this stuff is not going to help you get rid of it. This stuff will. All right, this stuff on its own won't be enough. You still need to exercise, as we spoke about with the strength training already. A quick sort of summary, like on things, like if I put it down to 10, with some things to do less of, some things to do more. So reduce sugars, eat good healthy fats like avocado, nuts, things like that. Try to avoid white bread and all the rubbish processed foods. Drink a lot of water. Control your stress. Eat more leafy veg. Eat lean protein. Move more often. 3 strength workouts. And try to not over obsess about scales and stuff like that, which I've spoken about before as well. All right, so it's pretty simple stuff. Same sort of thing here, probably, like get to bed on time. These are things where, people start to look for extreme ways to try and get on top of it, like fat burning supplements are not good ideas. Doing crazy exercises just to flatten their abs, that just never works. All it does is give you back pain. Crazy crash diets, like extreme sort of fasting things, they're not good ideas either. And stressing out about it, just take your time, do it right. Just keep it to the simple stuff and do one thing at a time. Sure, it might take you a bit longer, but you'll be on the right path if you do it right the first time. One thing that I probably need to speak about it as well is the hormone leptin. So we spoke about insulin. Leptin's sort of another one that sort of increases cravings for sweet foods. So it's like a sweet sensing modulator. It suppresses our brain signal to look for these crappy foods that like I spoke about before. This sort of stuff. Leptin's sort of really associated with that. So if you can, one way to control that is, like, again, through eating more regularly, but eating a diet that's avoiding this stuff and staying away from these sort of foods as much as you can, and then trying to exercise. It's all about changing habits. If you can avoid that, then you sort of that leptin thing will help you to control cravings, and you won't be looking for those comfort foods so much anymore. So if if your body's exposed to too much, it will just become resistant to it, just like it does with insulin. So and then when that happens, it no longer hears the message, just tell you to stop eating. So then you're always sort of hungry, constantly craving the stuff that you don't really want, which makes you feel crap, and you end up on that vicious cycle, and then eventually the abdominal fat creeps in and becomes a huge problem, as we've seen already. All right, so some of the best foods that you could really mix around. So I always say to try and get a lot of variety, and I've sort of given a little quick overview here of some of the things that you could that are associated with different stuff throughout the body. So you can see, like, you don't really want to limit yourself to just a handful of foods. Try to get a good variety. Some of them are fruits, some of them are proteins, some of them are like vegetables and greens, and some of them are not. You try and get like a good mix of things, and you get the best of everything. All right, so I always say, like with the vegetable side of things, eat the rainbow. They all have different sort of associated minerals and nutrients that are really useful for your body. All right, so try and eat the rainbow, and you'll get everything out of it. Balancing your blood sugars, which we spoke about triglycerides earlier. If we're looking at balancing blood sugars, try to keep things quite regular, well balanced. Make sure you get good fibre within your diet. Try to always include protein and fat with any snacks. So don't ever eat fruits by themselves. That's what So fruits are better than processed food, but the excess sugar content in it can sort of spiral you out of control again, and then you create the craving problem. All right, so try to always include some protein with it. Obviously, stress we've spoken about quite a few times. Get to bed on time and exercise wisely. So in summary, it's a very common condition, and metabolic syndrome, and it's it really increases the risk of much more serious problems, and if they're left untreated, it obviously increases your chance of dying early. So there's a lot of things you can do, and they're not really that hard. They're quite simple. Lower carb diets are good for most people. However, some people may need carbohydrates, but really limiting yourself to the processed foods and high sugar stuff goes a long way, and including that with exercise, eating a wide variety of different foods, will help you to stay in great shape and be looking at fun things to do instead of treating diseases and illness all the time. All right. So if you've got questions or anything, leave a comment at the bottom of the video here, and make sure you check out the description below. There's heaps of links to articles with more detail, and there's a free report you can get that has everything in this and thousands of information more on what to do. All right, so I hope you've enjoyed that video, and we'll see you on the next one.